The full George Floyd arrest video is out. Some BLM racketeering underway in Kentucky. Sweden sees no point in mask wearing. Biden's VP pick is imminent, and is time running out on TikTok? Welcome, my friends, to the Sexton Show, where I'm currently broadcasting from the midst of a tropical storm, I think, or it's some weather event here. We've got crazy gusts of winds. It sounds like my windows are going to blow in at any moment here. Rain all day. So we will hopefully be able to continue with the broadcast as is. That is certainly the plan. But there's going to be some technical challenges for some folks in the Eastern Corridor, that's for sure. But let's get right to it. George Floyd's killing by a Minneapolis police officer led to the restart of the BLM, the Black Lives Matter movement, a movement that is intentionally named in such a way that if you do not concede to all of its demands, you are immediately subject to questions about your possible racism, and you are clearly a horrible human being that no one should listen to, because how could you disagree with Black Lives Matter? And we get into this game of, no, of course, we all agree Black Lives Matter, but I do not agree, nor should I be forced or pressured to agree with BLM, the movement's list of demands. It's a very straightforward proposition, but there are a lot of people who are quite dishonest about it for obvious reasons. The George Floyd video that we saw showed Officer Derek Chauvin with a knee on the neck of George Floyd for over 8 minutes, and he is yelling, "I can't breathe," and he's clearly in deep distress. The officer involved here has already been charged with homicide and could face a very lengthy stint in prison, perhaps even the rest of his life in prison. We have to see what the final charges and of course what the jury says in all of this will be. But we saw this, and everyone, based on the video, condemned it. And there was still the BLM movement that rose up and said there's systemic racist police violence. That's the narrative. The narrative isn't really that there is such a thing as a rogue cop, a bad cop, or even a racist cop. It's that the system, this proves that cops are engaged in continuous systemic racism. And so we should all have this national conversation that quickly turned into a national excuse for rioting, looting, violence, arson, attacks on cops, undermining law enforcement and police across the country. Really wasn't much of a conversation, was it? And it's no surprise, because it's exactly what happened before. And the left saw this, the Democrat Party saw this as politically useful in the moment, so they wholeheartedly embraced it. Corporate America, which is full of a lot of self-interested cowards, as well as brainwashed left-wing ideologues now, completely supported this, no questions asked, sent it money, sent the movement whatever support they could. And there was a period there for a few weeks where if you said anything about this that wasn't a full bending of the knee, you risked losing your job. If you said all lives matter, you could get fired. And people did get fired from their jobs over that. Another statement of what is obviously and clearly true, but the truth is not the point, right? The point is the exploitation of emotions, all in order to have a shift of power from one group to another, so that the left can be ascendant, so that the socialist Democrats can have even greater control over your life and over the future of this country. That was really the purpose of all of this. And for people that would say, oh, that's ridiculous and it's just right-wing talking points, really? What has improved as a result of the BLM movement? What is better now? Nothing. Cities are less safe. More people, more black people have died because of this movement. Just look at the data. Look at the statistics. You've got violent crime rising, homicides, which are disproportionately affecting the black community. Homicides rising in 36 of 50 major U.S. cities, of the top 50 cities in the country. Chicago is a war zone in some parts of the city, not the whole city. And then on top of this, you have the piggybacking on the movement of the Antifa movement, right? You have the Antifa movement, which decides to attach itself, to hop on top of the BLM movement and trying to do everything that it can to bring down our system, or at least make our system as miserable and unlivable as possible in advance of a Joe Biden victory. So that's what we've seen happen. For all the marches and the kneeling and the teary-eyed white liberals showing up to scream in the faces of black police officers that they are betraying their race by being law-abiding, law-enforcing, good Americans who are protecting our communities. Unbelievable what so many of these white libs were doing at these protests. The racism that they were showing. And yet the media has learned no lessons from any of this. They still feel so smug and sanctimonious. A lot of millionaire anchors on CNN and MSNBC who haven't slept the night in a single high-crime neighborhood in their entire lives. Not one night. Okay? Let's just be honest about this. They're total frauds. But we see the benefits that you get if you're a Democrat, if you're a lib. You know, Nancy Pelosi, an absolutely disconnected, self-righteous, arrogant, multi-millionaire living in a true mansion in San Francisco. I mean, a palazzo for Pelosi. And she cares so much about violence in the black community in poor parts of major cities. She doesn't care. And I'm going to tell you this right now. She doesn't give a damn. She pretends. She doesn't really care. Useful for her. This is what the Democrats do. This is the real truth of the matter. They use this issue for their own purposes. They don't really care. They don't do anything. They're smart enough to know that all of this is posturing and theatrics. They're smart enough to know that this isn't going to make anyone's life better in majority black communities of America or any community in America. They don't care. They don't care. They're frauds, you see. There's a fraudulence at the heart of the Democrat Party today. That brings me now to the truth of the George Floyd arrest as we see it. Now, let me just first state, it still appears to me, based on the totality of the video evidence, that there was excessive force used against George Floyd, and the officer involved should be charged. So before Media Matters can clip this and say, oh, he's saying, it still seems to me, and again, I'm just going on the video evidence, which we didn't even have the full context of until now, right? We only saw a clip of the video. We didn't see the whole thing. But under the circumstances, the knee on the neck, there should have been greater care taken to make sure that George Floyd was not in lethal distress. That's my opinion. And the officer should be held fully culpable for it. That said, what you see in the almost 10 minutes or so of video leading up to the knee on the neck segment on the pavement in Minneapolis in front of onlookers with two other officers present, what you see is George Floyd acting like an EDP, we would call it in the NYPD in New York, an emotionally disturbed person. This guy was completely having a panic attack, saying things that made no sense, and shouting constantly that he can't breathe and he's terrified and he can't breathe, while he's being gently walked in handcuffs from his own car into the police car, while he's standing outside in open air. He's shouting, I can't breathe, I can't breathe. When no one's doing, and understand this, later on he's saying it when there's a knee on his neck. But the video shows him saying it when there is no pressure on his neck or anywhere else for that matter. Yes, he's handcuffed, but there's no reasonable expectation that would asphyxiate anybody. So he's yelling he can't breathe. Now, why is that relevant? It's relevant because it shows that the officers involved were courteous, respectful, and professional until they had received substantial resistance. He was resisting arrest. He was refusing to get in a car. He was claiming to be claustrophobic about getting into a car when they had already pulled him out of a car. So they pull him out. They tell him to step out to be arrested from his vehicle. And then they're trying to put him in a cop car, and he starts screaming that he's claustrophobic and that he can't breathe. He has drugs in his system. He had fentanyl in his system. He was high. Now, again, that doesn't change the excessive force component of this, and it doesn't change the lack of care given to Floyd on the ground by the officer who had him in custody. But if we're looking at severity of the charge, then it may factor in when you're looking at what the defense will be able to tell a jury. It will factor in. Then there's the bigger issue that this raises, which is that this video in no way shows cops hunting a black man for the purposes of racism out to kill him. That is not what happened. Excessive force is bad in any police situation, and cops need to be held accountable for it, and it does happen. I've written about it when it has happened. I thought that cops have committed murder. We all know this. It does happen. But to say that this incident was just a racist, practically a member of the Klan cop going out and just killing a black man for no reason is not true. Meaning that it wasn't, there's no reason to believe there were racist origins in the targeting of Floyd, or that the officers set out in their minds to physically hurt him at all. The video shows them saying, "Step out of the car, please, step out of the car." At one point, an officer pulls his weapon and points it at Floyd, because Floyd, who is actually hysterical, just from cops saying, "Can you step out of the car?" He's panicking, he's shouting, he's saying, "Don't shoot me." He's high. The officer pulls his weapon because he keeps saying, "Keep your hands on the steering wheel. Keep your hands where I can see them. Keep your hands out in full view." And Floyd doesn't comply, so he draws his weapon. "Put your hands on the steering wheel." Okay. He puts his hands on the steering wheel. The officer immediately holsters his weapon, puts him in handcuffs, walks him toward the other vehicle, to the police vehicle. Why didn't we see this video until now? Why is it that a British tabloid, the Daily Mail, were the ones that got it and posted it? Shouldn't the American public, in a case of this gravity that affected American consciousness and was having a real effect, a very negative one, on cities coast to coast, shouldn't we have seen the full context of the arrest? They had the body camera footage. Why do we have to wait months to see this? Because it does not support the narrative of racist, evil cops. It shows that cops were challenged with a very difficult situation, a criminal from his past who was high and not complying with lawful orders, and then because he had said so many times, "I can't breathe," the officer, and he should be held accountable for this because it's on him, right? You've got someone handcuffed, you got your knee on their neck. That's not okay. That's criminal. He killed the man. So again, I'm not saying the officer isn't guilty of excessive force leading to a death here. I'm not saying he shouldn't face charges. I still believe he should. But the narrative of a racist cop just going out to kill a black man for no reason whatsoever other than racism, which is what we were fed. That's what we were told. That's why LeBron James went out and said that black people are, quote, literally being hunted when they leave their homes. That was the LeBron James quote, right? That's just not true. That's not, and no one would watch this. No fair-minded person watches this video and says, "Oh, these cops just want to kill this guy." No, it was the cops were dealing with an emotionally disturbed, under the influence of drugs person having a complete panic and did not handle it appropriately. And one officer put pressure on his neck, killed him, led to his death, and is going to be held accountable for it. But there's no systemic targeting of a black man by his race from the start of this video that makes you think that this was a racially motivated killing. And this is what there's going to be a lot of debate and fighting over right now. It was excessive force dealing with a difficult arrest, which is illegal. But that's not what we were told this was in the beginning. We were told this was an execution. We were told that this was just sheer, pure racism. I think that's a much more difficult case to make when you see the way these officers interacted with Floyd, spoke to Floyd, worked with him until he simply refused to get into the cop car after all kinds of asking, cajoling, practically begging the officers, please just get in the car. Please, we'll roll down the windows for you. We'll make sure you're okay. That's what the racist cops say. Please just get in the car. We'll roll down the windows and make sure you're comfortable. And the guy wouldn't get in the car. So then Officer Chauvin puts him on the ground, puts his knee on his neck, and kills him. But remember, he's saying, I can't breathe, which is what he had been saying for 10 minutes before when he could breathe. The officer is still responsible, but to me, it looks like involuntary manslaughter. It's certainly not a hate crime murder that was intentional from the start. And that's a very big difference. I can't believe we're losing our house that we didn't even sell. That's what Deborah said when she found out that she was the victim of home title theft, which is a crime that can actually cost you your home. Here's how it works. The bad guys find your information online, and then they forge your signature stating that you sold your home to them. You often won't find out about this until the payments or eviction notice arrives. You've got to protect yourself from this growing crime. The FBI is warning people about it frequently. Go to Home Title Lock. That's the place that can create a virtual barrier around your home's title online. In fact, if you go to HomeTitleLock.com and use promo code BUCK right now, you can get 30 free days of protection. That's HomeTitleLock.com, promo code BUCK. That'll get you 30 free days of protection. You can also check to see if you're already a victim of this crime and don't even know it yet. Take action, take precautions today. HomeTitleLock.com. Again, HomeTitleLock.com, promo code BUCK. Is there a double standard from elected officials, from people in positions of power in the BLM era? Well, here's a great example of that double standard from Mayor de Blasio, who now, because he took city time and resources to paint a BLM sign outside of Trump Tower, other groups want to paint Blue Lives Matter signs on the streets, right? The streets are now an open political canvas, aren't they? Oh, but they have to go through a permitting process. Did de Blasio go through a permitting process for his BLM sign? Please, play 4.
We haven't said no to people who said if you want to apply, you can apply, but there's a process. Look, the fact is that what I decided to do with the Black Lives Matter murals, and this came out of a meeting at Gracie Mansion weeks ago with community leaders and activists who said this would be such an important thing for this city to declare officially. That is something, again, transcends all normal realities because we are in a moment of history where this had to be said and done. That's a decision I made. But the normal process continues for anyone who wants to apply.
This really is the lib mentality across the board about BLM. All the rules are out the window if it interferes with the BLM agenda. This is what he says. This normal point this extraordinary point in time is what? Says who? That's what I mean. All of a sudden, whether it's the protests or the signs on the streets, normal rules don't apply. Oh, because this is so important. What exactly makes this moment so important? What has changed? What's the big policy directive? What's the change in law that's going to make us all better? Oh, it's all just right. Nonsense from libs. Nonsense. Self-righteous, virtue signaling nonsense from the Democrat Party. There we go. Oh, and the process is the punishment, of course, there's a process to go through.
Bill O'Reilly here, and I need your help. Millions of Americans who believe that the USA is a noble nation are furious about what they're seeing in the streets. They're angry about anarchy being enabled by a dishonest media that is promoting hatred toward America. That's why we launched the Stand Up for Your Country campaign on BillO'Reilly.com. I knew it was going to be big. I didn't know it was going to be this big. We've had hundreds of thousands of signups, and we are flooding the zone with new stickers Folks love these stickers. But most importantly, we have a philosophy. America is a good country, and we are going to prove that to you night after night. We hope you'll become a premium member on BillO'Reilly.com so you can access everything we do and join the campaign. But if you don't want to do that, just come on in and read what we have. Stand up for your country, because if you do not, we're going to lose it. Check out BillO'Reilly.com and join the campaign.
President Trump sat down with Axios, which is another one of these lib news websites. Oh, but they provide the great service of giving you one paragraph and then a talking point, a lib talking point below of what the conclusion is of why this matters. You know, for the libs who find the New York Times front page is taking too long to read, you know, they go to Axios, I guess. I don't know. Some people go to this website. It started by Politico people. How many lib websites with all the same opinions, all the same thoughts on the news have to exist? I mean, it's pretty amazing when you think about it, isn't it? They're all telling you exactly the same thing. None of them have anything, no unique takes. It's just, are we far left or just sort of far left? Okay, well, I'm so glad that we have those diverse opinions out there from the liberal media. But anyway, we've got the president weighed in on a number of issues here, and they're hammering him today. They're picking the parts of the interview where, look, it wasn't a particularly strong interview for Trump. I don't know why he sits down with Axios and, you know, at this point in time, so that they can push him on things that I don't. Some of the things I think are just clearly meant to goad Trump, and everyone knows that if you're in the press and you ask the president a question where he's expected to give a certain answer, and he doesn't want to, he really likes to stick it to the media and be like, nah, I'm not gonna give the answer that I know I'm supposed to give. I'm not gonna say the thing that I know I'm supposed to say. So there was some of that too. But he was asked about where we are with COVID and in this Axios interview, and here's what he said. Play 17.
Even in these states, however, where the virus is under control and at a very low number, Americans should continue to be vigilant, be careful, in order to prevent the new hotspots from opening up, or any new hotspots from opening up in those states. To that end, I urge all Americans to continue to socially distance, wash your hands, wear a mask when you cannot avoid crowded places, and to protect the elderly. Very, very important. Protect the elderly.
So that was actually Trump's press conference, but same idea. He's talking about what he's trying to do, what we're trying to do nationwide against COVID. I will return to this issue of how the libs really give this sense that they know what would need to be done to make this virus go away. And I'm just wondering, when will they tell us? When can we hear? Because if their only thing is wear a mask and shut down the economy, that won't work, and that is crazy. So this make-believe world they live in, where there is no virus, the virus has hit all over the world, all right? And countries that we had been told have beaten it are having surges right now. So they're still trying to suppress it, and it's a challenge all over the globe. And if you look on a per capita basis, the U.S. is still in far better shape when it comes to mortality from this than many other comparable major countries. You know, the UK, Italy, Spain were pretty even with Germany. Anyway, I'll get back to COVID response in a second. That was on me. I picked out a clip that was not of the Axios interview, but of the Trump press conference yesterday. So let's actually go into producer Mark. I'm assuming. Well, I know this was a question that was asked in the press conference about John Lewis, the president, getting a lot of pushback on this one. Play 16.
I don't know John Lewis. He chose not to come to my inauguration. He chose. I never met John Lewis. Actually, I don't believe.
Do you find him impressive?
I can't say one way or the other. I find a lot of people impressive. I find many people not impressive. But I didn't go.
Did you find his story impressive?
He didn't come to my inauguration. He didn't come to my State of the Union speeches. And that's okay. That's his right. And again, nobody has done more for black Americans than I have.
I understand.
He should have come. I think he made a big mistake.
But taking your relationship with him out of it, do you find his story impressive, what he's done for this country?
He was a person that devoted a lot of energy and a lot of heart to civil rights, but there were many others also.
There's a petition to rename the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama as the John Lewis Bridge. Would you support that idea?
I would have no objection to it if they'd like to do it.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Would have no objection to it whatsoever.
Okay.
But see, that's not acceptable to the establishment, the live media. He's supposed to genuflect and go on a long, there's so many people in the media that they honestly don't know a darn thing about the legacy of John Lewis or really the civil rights movement, but they know what they're supposed to say. He was a giant of the civil rights movement, a hero. And look, he was a hero of the civil rights movement. That's true. But Trump doesn't like to be in a position where he has to say the thing that everybody has to say in that moment in time. You can argue that this is, or you could certainly take the position this is a little bit childish of the president, and he shouldn't play into the journalists' hands on these things. But I also think the president takes it kind of personally. Why didn't John Lewis show up to the president's inauguration? But really, he's the president of the United States. I think he's allowed to be a little annoyed about that. I do wish the president was a little more generous about John Lewis as civil rights hero, but John Lewis as congressman is a politician just like any other, folks. Right? These are different things. This is a bit similar to John McCain, of course, his military service, incredible, wonderful, praiseworthy, honorable, all that. That's all true. John McCain, the politician, really liked to send other people's children off to fight wars that weren't a particularly good idea, and loved to get nice things written about him in the New York Times at the expense of the conservative movement in this country. Okay? Like, we're allowed to criticize a politician. I'm not criticizing him as a human being. I'm not being rude about somebody who has passed away. But these are different areas of discussion. But Trump should know that that's a nuance that will not be in any way will not be accepted at this point in time. You are allowed only one thing. It has to be, according to the media and according to the establishment, you have to bow down and just speak in the most glowing terms possible about every aspect of anything that John Lewis ever did ever. That's the only thing that's allowed. Now, again, I'm somebody who thinks that when someone passes away, out of respect for the family, there should be a little bit of a decency in public discourse, and just use your judgment, right? Be a nice human being about things when you can. But the president is getting absolutely hammered. I mean, oh my gosh, the journalists are all freaking out about this absolutely all day. I'm still the John Lewis news cycle that we're in right now, for me, is largely dominated by the blaring and completely unacceptable double standard for travel to this funeral. Right. You can't have a funeral. You're not allowed. John Lewis is important. So he can have multiple funeral services where states will waive the health restrictions in place for people to be able to go, because it's all so special. It's also because he's important. Your family is not. The state wants your family is not important. I can tell you this right now. If I had a family friend, or God forbid, a member of my family who passed away during this pandemic, it's a hell of a lot more important to me than going to a John Lewis funeral if I'm somebody who is in the public eye, right? Your actual connection to someone, assuming that I didn't know him, I never met the man. Your actual connection to a family member. I know people say, "Oh my gosh, how could you?" Yeah, your connection to a family member matters a heck of a lot more than paying your respects to a political figure. But the state allows one and not the other. Why is that? Well, we all know why. Because they pretend that this is all about health, but it's really all about so very much more. And it's really ultimately supposed to just be about making all of this Trump's fault. This is everything that we see happening across the country, all the bad things going on is Trump's fault. Here's Bro Cuomo. He's done with his deadlifting for the day, and he wants to lecture the country on what to do about Trump and what a terrible guy he is. Play 5.
Middle of a pandemic, and this president spent the weekend hitting golf balls and bragging about his large MAGA crowd turnouts in coronavirus hot zones. No masks, big crowd. Pathetic. And the reality is, once again, the key is the we. It's the truth, my brothers and sisters. This man is determined to keep down his golf handicap, not the number of cases that are making us sick. Should we be pushing on Congress? Absolutely. But too many on the right are playing the game because they're afraid of him.
Keeping his golf handicap down instead of dealing with... We're really going to do this now? So what's the president supposed to do? We're all under lockdown. We're all dealing with this misery. Is he not allowed to play golf? It's outdoors. It's zero risk for the people around him. You're socially distanced. What's the problem? I remember when Obama, who played a lot of golf, Obama would get criticized for his golfing during 2 wars and a war against terrorism that the Obama administration was doing a terrible job of winning. And there were mass casualty attacks on U.S. soil and ISIS and all that. Obama playing a lot of golf. And the libs would say, it was racist to criticize Obama playing golf. That was what some of the journalists would say. It was just more evidence of the racism of the right. Are you allowed to play golf or not? Can we get one standard? This is the problem with libs. You can never make any headway in an argument with them or even an exchange of ideas because what's true one day is not true the next to them. All truth is relative. They just make it up as they go along. It's whatever works in the moment, whatever gets people on their side excited, makes them feel good. And whatever they say to that end is considered acceptable. Even something as dumb as he's keeping his golf handicap down instead of COVID cases. What is the president supposed to? Is the president supposed to give a nationwide lockdown order? I mean, we've had all this focus on testing as if we have enough testing, we're going to deal with this problem in a way that we wouldn't. We got 800,000 tests a day in this country, I think is the last number I saw. They're basically doing 1 million tests a day all across America, close to it. Are we in much better shape because of that? A test is not a cure. A test is not even a treatment. What do we think for a disease that has a huge asymptomatic spread? How is testing ever? Remember Nancy Pelosi for months? Testing. The president doesn't understand, doesn't have enough testing. What? And trace they've left out now because it turns out that the trace plan that they had at this stage of a pandemic was absurd. You're never going to catch up to all these people anywhere. Not in any one city, not in any one state. This is madness. It was madness from the beginning. But they thought, oh, yeah, that's what we're going to do. Remember, folks, there is a huge ideological divide between people who understand that the government is incapable in any way of solving certain problems and is inept in doing things that it should be able to do. So there are some things that are beyond government's capability to solve, and there are a lot of other things that the government should be able to at least make better, and it actually makes worse. And we're seeing a lot of that with the COVID-19 pandemic. We're seeing a lot of that play out before our eyes right now. And then, of course, all the blame shifting, all the efforts to make this about Trump and about nothing else. Maxine Waters, always interesting sound bites from Maxine Waters. Member of Congress, folks. Democrat, member of Congress. Play clip 12.
And for those people who like him and support him and believe in him, many of them have followed him. Mm-hmm. And in following him, it took all of this time for him to finally come around to saying that masks were important and masks should be worn. And I want to tell you, a lot of people who have not worn those masks because their president didn't wear them and told them that it didn't make any difference are probably dead now, and he's responsible for it.
People didn't wear masks because of Trump, she says, and because of that, they died. So they died because of Trump. A lot of people died who were wearing masks all the time. I just wonder, so what do we think about that? There's a logical fallacy that keeps getting applied here. We have no idea whether somebody didn't wear a mask at one point in time because of Trump and got COVID and then died, or if they were wearing a mask a lot and then it didn't matter because they still got the virus, which is absolutely not just possible. It's the evidence points to it as being probable. It is likelier than not that if you're exposed to this virus, the mask will not save you from getting infected. At least based on all the studies that they actually have, real studies on this, not theoretical modeling. I'll give you yet another example of it. Sweden has joined the Netherlands now, yet another country where their top docs, their health experts, have come out to say, hey, there's no point, quote, we see no point in wearing masks, including on public transportation. And this is as COVID-19 cases are dropping in the country. This is all reported by Fortune magazine and Newsweek here. As of Sunday, the latest death rate in Sweden per 100,000 people was 56. The figure is lower than that in the UK, 69, Spain, 60, Italy, 58. So that's data that Newsweek put out from Johns Hopkins University. The UK has the world's fourth highest death toll overall, while Spain and Italy, which had the sixth highest and eighth highest death tolls respectively, were formerly Europe's two countries worst hit by the outbreak. Sweden's latest case fatality ratio, portion of deaths compared to total cases, was reported to be 7.1%. The figure is more than half the percentage reported in the UK, 15%, half of Italy and Belgium, each at about 14%, and almost half that of France, 13%. So Sweden has less per capita deaths. Okay, Sweden has done better against the virus and never locked down. Someone explain. A few months ago, we were told, oh, Sweden is experimenting in national sacrifice, and it's terrible, and everyone's going to die there. No, there were people got sick, people died, just like it's happened everywhere. No lockdown, better outcome than a whole lot of its neighboring countries that did lock down. Someone want to explain that? No mandated mask wearing outside, none of this. My friends, I understand. I'm sick of this issue, too. I want all of this to go away. But the people who are exploiting this and who are hysterical and don't learn from the past are the ones that are making the decisions now about what's going to happen in the future. The lockdowns are getting worse.